back to the channel, and today we are working on the Pantera build. A couple of you guys commented on the last video saying that you wanted to see what was going on with it. Now, we were building a 351. You guys haven't seen anything on that really, but we're building like a budget 351, flat top pistons, blueprint racing heads. We'll bring you some more on that later, but the owner of that motor that's having us build that for a 67 Cougar also owns this Pantera. It's a pretty cool project. It's a 351 Cleveland. Nice. Yeah, right. It's a 351 Cleveland mid-engine. I'm sitting on the transmission currently. And it came in popping through the intake, popping through the carburetor and doing routine diagnosis. The carburetor was really gunked up nasty, and it had a ton of leak down caused by the intake valve. So we pulled the heads off of it. So now we have the heads off of it. We got those pressure tested, and that cylinder did not do very well at all. But all of the cylinders had worn guides, worn seats, worn valves. I mean, they look like they had 1,000,000 miles on them. So, but the motor's been rebuilt, and it has dome pistons in it, and probably has a decent amount of compression. And we've just been kind of knocking out some other issues along the way. The balancer has spun, so we weren't able to even set the timing during our routine checkup. So that had to be changed. So the balancer's already been swapped. And now I'm working on cleaning and blowing out all the head bolt holes so everything's clean. We already scraped the deck surface. China rails are all clean, and the valley's clean. So now I'm just carefully blowing out the bolt holes. I scraped the manifolds, the headers, and we have all new gaskets for all that. And we're gonna start putting this together. We haven't heard it run, we haven't seen it run, but supposedly it's a pretty stout little motor, and based on the compression that it looks like it has, it's probably like, 11.5, 12 to 1. The deck surface is damn near flat, if not just a little bit out, which means it's gonna have some compression, and it's domed. So, and these Clevelands need it because they have huge dumpster ports on the intake and the exhaust side. This one in particular has an air gap intake manifold, which is severely restricting the intake size. But realistically, that could improve intake velocity, so it might help. We're not going to sit here and port the thing, so however it goes together is however it goes together in this case. But it's pretty cool. We're pretty excited to hear what it sounds like running. We'll probably see this thing back in the winter time. He's thinking about doing a roller camshaft conversion and maybe like a Holley Sniper Stealth on top rather than carbureted stuff. That's where we're at with the Pantera. So then we're going to, I'm gonna be working on this. In the meantime, I'll have Dan give you guys an update on the 2-valve project. We'll clip that in here. He was working on that yesterday. And then kind of wrap up with the Pantera today before lunch. And then we'll see what we update you on after that. It's kind of rainy the next couple days, so we're not gonna go out and kick any M3's ass. If you don't understand that reference, I will put the link right there. So you guys can go see that. Back to work.
All right, now I'm back. Fresh battery, should be good to go. Got the 2-valve back. The Fobra is here. John just dropped it off. John and John. So it is getting a lethal budget full return system, along with a 276 upper pulley from Billet Flow to hopefully add a little more boost. I think they're going to be running E85 this season. This is what we're obviously planning for. Get all the fuel system ready for that. Got injectors coming on the way, should be here soon, and then put it on the dyno and see what it puts down. So like I said, already jumped into it this morning, got the tank out, all that's good to go. Open everything up, kind of see what I got here to work with. So it's got a Division X hat, it's got Fergola line, and then we went with the Walbro pumps, twin pump setup, full return system, PTFE for E85. And yeah, I think that is more or less the bulk of this stage of the project. We're also obviously going to put an O2 bung in for the tuning, and I believe that is all. We're going to look at the intercooler system, see what's going on with that. Make sure everything's all good with that in terms of no coolant leaks or anything. Because it seems to have maybe a very subtle one, but not too sure. And then kind of address this tip. Usually like come down just a little bit. See what's holding it up. Try and get that all lined up and make sure that looks good and everything. But I don't think you guys have seen it since it's been back, obviously. It got some SVE series 2 or 3, not sure. Obviously people can correct me in the comments. But it sits nice. It looks really good with the car. The overall look of everything. I think we're gonna try and remove maybe an isolator or two on the rear to kind of get it to sit close to what the front sits at, and kind of make it more of an even keel car. We're gonna, I think, replace these with some factory Cobra ones because these are too close. They don't let the sway bar come down far enough. When it's at full droop, it pulls the sway bar up, obviously. And when it does that, it pushes up against the AC compressor and kind of lifts up the whole motor, which we don't like. So, going to be switching these out too. Hopefully that solves that issue. At least we're going to try to switch those and see what that'll do. And then that should solve that. Otherwise, pretty sure that's the project for this time. So, I will get this all going and show the progress along the way. Oh, I guess here, a little tidbit on how to get the hat off. Obviously, take the top bolts off. And then there's these 2 little clips on the side when you're in the tank. You want to squeeze both of these towards you. It pulls away at the clips on the sides that hold it into that little plastic casing thing. And pulls right out. So, yep, gonna be tearing this apart and get the hat in and show you what it all looks like. Well, it's been a little longer than anticipated because this fuel system is, how do I put this nicely? Not one we would always choose, I guess. But
Live and learn.
yeah, I guess so.
This will be the last one.
Right. Because this is a lethal budget fuel system, which I believe it's only budget because it utilizes a factory feed line, and that's probably about it. Because in order to get this division hat into the tank, you had to do a lot of modification, which on a GT is way worse than probably on a Cobra. On a Cobra is probably a very simple system in terms of the whole lethal budget system. It's probably better for a Cobra. However, I would still probably go with a 4 innovation system, just based on experience that we've had in all the cars that we put it in. Because you have to, on the GTs, they have this little plastic baffle case that encapsulates, you saw before, the pump assembly. And in order to get that division hat in there, Lethal says to just break it out. So, yeah, as you can see, we had to just absolutely demolish this little plastic cover that was inside of the fuel tank, because that is held in on like 4 tack welds, which you cannot get to, and we did not want to use a grinder inside the gas tank or anything like that. So the only way to do it, break it apart. And then we had to like hammer down the little metal pocket it sits in as well, because the reason you have to break it is because that plastic is like melted into that metal casing, and then I'm sure then they tack it into the tank, which obviously you can't get that out, so you got to break it apart in a bunch of pieces. And then you have to cut the hoses that the Division X hat has, because it pushes the pumps down too far and then it bobs out against the tank and the hat doesn't sit flush. So that was another thing that we had to deal with, which yeah, so we got all that on. Division X.
We're not double the amount of time that we thought we were going to.
Yeah, right. We anticipate this to be nice, drop in and go. So lessons learned would be maybe spend a little more money and get a Cobra tank, and then this, you could still stick with the budget fuel system if you wanted to, because it would still be simple and it would have the baffling, which will lead to another point, but the Cobra tank will have the baffling around the hat, and you won't have to deal with messing with the plastic casing that the pump housing holds. And then going back to the baffling, we were told by Lethal that you'll start running into like hiccups issues, because we've had an issue with the Turbo Fox buy that we did. We just put like an AN hanger on it with a bigger like Hellcat style pump, I guess is what it is, the 525 single pump in it. And once it gets to like, what is it, like an 1/8 tank, quarter tank?
Yeah, it's about 1/8.
1/8 to a quarter tank. Anytime you get on it, it like kind of hiccups and chokes itself, and does all sorts of weird things because obviously it's getting a little fuel starvation because the fuel is sloshing all around in the back. So fingers crossed that it doesn't do that, but just a heads up. So that kind of sucks for that one, which would be another reason why I would say kind of, you know, find a Cobra tank if you can, if you're trying to do this whole system onto a GT that you're trying to make some power through with a 2-valve. But yeah, obviously they cost a lot to try to find a tank. We found brand new ones like what, $400 we saw, $500? Yeah, $500. It doesn't come with all the evap stuff on top of the tank, which then you'd have to transfer from that to that one. Or you just find like a used Cobra tank, which are few and far between, and when they are there, they bring a hefty price as well. So that's what we would recommend in terms of that.
But I mean, on the positive side of this is that we'll probably keep an eye out for a Cobra tank for John, because we would like to see this switched. We're really not a fan of the GT tank, and we try to do the fuel system on a budget, which is why we ended up this way. But luckily, we don't like it. We will not do it for somebody else, and we will likely be looking for a Cobra tank to swap this over to. And when we do that, we'll probably also swap the feed line to a -8 feed line and run a new feed line and a filter. You know, we tried to save, you know, $800 to $1,000 by using this lethal system, and so far that's resulted in what I would call poor quality. And really, we have just that amount of time involved in modifying the tank to work, and you're still stuck with the factory feed line, which will support enough horsepower for what this car is going to make. But at this point, I would have much rather ran a -8 feed, a -6 return, make a regulator mount with that time that we spent modifying the fuel tank, because Lethal couldn't really tell us how to modify it gently.
In a better way, yeah, right?
They said just crush the shit out of it. So that's what we did.
Yeah, so yeah, we probably, like I said, ideally we would like to see it in a Cobra tank, which, like I said before, it'll just be a nice swap over, because that hat will still work on a Cobra tank, and it should slide right in. And for a GT, you have to get a fuel level sender adapter plate in order to make this work on a Division hat. So that was another thing that the whole Lethal budget system doesn't, did it come with it?
What's that?
It said it's required. I think you had to buy it separately.
Yeah, it's like a $740.
Yeah, you had to buy that little metal piece separately, so which is kind of annoying. But yep, so we're gonna be throwing the tank up in here. I got the wire loom ran down like we did with my car. You just wire, if you could see. So we utilizes the grommet that the factory line comes through right there. This one I cut obviously a bigger section in because this whole big loom comes through there. Mine, I only had 4 wires go through, so a little slit. This one had this whole loom, and then you use the yellow and black from that harness, which taps into the yellow and black from the tank for the fuel level center. So I'm gonna throw it up in there and get all the wiring nice and tight and connect the return line, and then everything else will be done. We'll just be running the return line over and up into the engine bay, and that's about it for under the car. It's got a couple other things we might have to address. John will know that their upper diff bushings are shot, so those need to be replaced. Like I said before.
Not surprising based on how he drives it.
Yes, very true. And based on what we said before, probably try and pull a couple isolators out of these springs to kind of get the rear to come down a little bit. And that, like I said, then that will probably wrap up underneath the car and the sway bar stuff up front. So that's what we're going to be doing here shortly, and then engine bay stuff will probably come tomorrow, because that's going to be a long time. Well, what's going on, everybody? Back with the 2-valve fuel system going in. They want you to obviously wire the grounds in there, tap into that pink and black with the blue lines they supply. They tell you to self-tapper these 2 relays to wherever you can. I was able to use the FPDM, and it has 4 bolts. Obviously, usually it's got 2 holes on each right there where that 1 bolt is. It's got obviously 2 there. So I just use the lower ones, the larger holes. So able to just get the relays mounted up nice and tight. She's pretty strong. Then you run the ground wires right to where the FPDM grounds. So that works right there. Tucked up all along here. And it follows the factory one up underneath the trunk here. So then that goes under the fuel tank, and so on and so forth. Then I ran the power wires Followed, they already had a boost pump, obviously, as you saw before. That went in there. Followed that line up, down, and around. Goes up into the interior. Obviously follows down up through the kick panel. Comes into the car right there. Down there. Follows down around, obviously right to the battery with the fusible link they supplied. That goes on right there. What we also found is you cannot run a billet flow pulley with this setup. So we're gonna call Torque Tech and see what we can do, because this one, here's the billet flow. That is not gonna work. So the hub is way smaller on this blower than the billet flow hub. So you're gonna have to figure out, it's also keyed, has a keyway in it, as you can see there. So we're gonna have to see what we gotta do with that. Ran the return line up, away from the rear end. Follow down there. Other side of the exhaust. Subframe connectors I think will be going on this, so kind of anticipated that and ran it typically where we usually would. Ran along the side, pinch welds, then up, typically as we do, up in, through there, and then back onto the regulator. It's going rather smoothly, other than having to remove EGR and get all that back together, so.
Alright guys, I'm chilling in the hot tub of the Pantera. It's comfortable if you get in the right position. But we just got the heads torqued down. They're on, they're good. Used a 1013 head gasket, which is a Permaseal, Permatorque, Fel Pro, nothing crazy. A little bit thicker than the last ones, but only by about 7 thousandths, 6 thousandths I think. But you could use it. So we got all new valve springs on the heads, we got all new valves, all new guides. So we basically spent a bunch of money on these ones, but it would have been about twice the cost, if not more, to put an aluminum set on it. So, you know, we didn't want to go crazy. Maybe in the future, but for now, this will be good for a long time. But now we're going to get ready to put all the push rods in it and adjust the roller rockers. And then we'll move on to sealing the top of this thing up. We're waiting for valve cover gaskets. And we might reclock the distributor to make the wires nicer. Right now it's on top dead center on one, but that's going to change once we start playing with it. And yeah, it's going pretty smoothly. Donnie, say hi to YouTube. There's a daily dose of Loris.
Well, heads, intake, rocker, push rods, headers, valve set. She's all good to go. Gotta wait for the RTV to dry, obviously. I gotta put valve covers back on, put the carb back on, spark plugs, and that's a wrap. And fill it with coolant and oil change. Nicholas is putting some studs in the 9-inch.
You haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it looks badass. I'm sure we'll get a better video of it.
Separate video of it coming soon.
Right. Gold vein going there, but Pantera project's coming along nicely. I don't, yeah.
Oh, it's raining.
Well, Pantera is all back together. Like Nick was saying, looks like it never came apart. Well, I guess it does because we made it a little cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, we still got to relock the distributor.
Yeah, we gotta check the timing and make sure that's all good now that we have a balancer that actually reads correctly. The other balancer was off like what, 150 degrees or something like that? Spun on itself. Luckily the weight didn't matter because that stayed fixed to the center. Just the outer ring spun. So a little bit difficult to time, but it's all back together. Carbs rebuilt. Cylinder heads are all rebuilt. All new head gaskets, valve cover gaskets, intake gaskets, header gaskets, spark plugs. Next thing is oil change and fire her up. So we're gonna wait for the RTV to dry, play musical cars here a little bit, and gonna try to see if that X-pipe fits on my car. Fingers crossed. Not sure yet, but so we're gonna probably do that here, move cars around like I said, and then go get mine. So we'll be right back with you. All right guys, we're back. The Pantera is running. Woo! Sounds good, it's running good. We're a little conservative on the timing. take the Pantera for a ride. Obviously, we're gonna bring you guys with us, see how it does, make sure it doesn't ping or anything. The timing control is very limited. It's all in the distributor, and it seems like it has a lot of advance. So I have it like sucked down even with the vacuum advance on it, all the way down to like 10 degrees, because I don't really want to advance much over 30. Especially, it seems to be higher compression, and with 93 octane, it's not going to be the greatest. So it starts a lot easier where it's at right now, and that's where we're going to leave it for now. We'll see how it drives. But otherwise, it's mostly together. There's no air cleaner on it. That's about it. And I think I want to tighten the valves up a little bit, but we're going to test drive it first. All right, guys, we are taking the Pantera for its maiden voyage. It's been holding temp good. It's got good oil pressure. Everything checks out to give it its first go round here. Running pretty good so far. Idle's good. It's very strange having like no hood. How's manual steering? It's alright, once you're moving. My butt hurts more than anything. First gear is down and back, which is interesting. It's pretty cool. You do?
I mean, if you don't get any notice. I can't see shit out of my mirrors, but that's okay.
I don't think that's a factory mirror. We are riding in a 1972 Tomaso, I think is how you say it, Pantera. Life is good.
Yeah, this actually rides pretty nice.
It's pretty, yeah, it is pretty smooth. I'm scared to death in here though. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we are literally, the water pump pulley is 2 inches behind this protective shield.
Are we going somewhere?
Seabirds. It's kind of cool though, having the engine right there. We had to go through the heads, rebuild the carburetor, and so far so good. Roll into it a little bit right here. What's that?